What if I told you that the absolute best lure in your tackle box, the one you swear by every single year, turns into an invisible ghost the second it hits the water? Seriously, think about it. You tie on your favorite spring bait, you cast it out, and you wait for a massive strike, but nothing happens. Today, we are talking about the ugly truth of spring fishing in murky water. I'm going to show you exactly why your go-to bait is completely failing you, and why you are practically fishing blind without even realizing it. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will look at your tackle box in a completely different way, and you might just throw away some of your oldest habits. Before we get into the heavy stuff, I want you to tell me the truth. What is your absolute favorite confidence bait for spring fishing? Drop the name of it down in the comments right now, and let us see if you have been wasting your time. Let us set the stage so we all understand what we are dealing with. Springtime is notorious for bringing heavy rains, melting snow, and massive runoff. All of that extra moisture washes dirt and mud straight into our lakes and rivers. Overnight, your beautiful clear fishing spot turns into a giant bowl of thick brown soup. But despite this drastic change in the environment, what do most fishermen do? They do the exact same thing they have done for 20 years. They reach for the exact same lure that caught them a personal best 3 summers ago. We get incredibly stubborn. We believe that if a bait is good, it will work anywhere, at any time. We completely ignore the fact that the fish are living in a fundamentally different world when the water gets muddy. The rules of engagement change entirely. If you do not adapt to the darkness, you are just going to stand on the bank, freezing your fingers off and staring at a motionless rod tip for 8 hours straight. Let us paint a picture of a typical spring morning. You wake up at 5 in the morning, grab a hot cup of coffee, and head down to the lake. The air is cold, the birds are waking up, and you feel incredibly confident about the day. You walk right up to the edge of the bank, look down, and see that the water is an absolute mess. It is heavily stained and muddy, but instead of adapting, you pull out a translucent green plastic worm because it looks so realistic in your hand. You cast it out into the murky depths and wait for that familiar thump. 10 minutes pass, 30 minutes pass. You start wondering if the fish have moved to deeper water. The brutal reality is that your realistic little worm is entirely invisible in that water. You might as well be casting a bare hook. The fish are totally unaware that your bait even exists. This brings us to a major transition point. We need to talk about the granddaddy of all fishing myths. How many times have you heard an old-timer tell you to simply match the hatch? They say you must use natural colors that mimic exactly what the fish are naturally eating. That is fine advice for a crystal-clear stream in the middle of July. But matching the hatch in muddy spring water is a recipe for total disaster. Think about it logically. If the water is muddy and brown, and you throw a natural, subtle brown crawdad imitation, your bait is literally blending into the background. You are camouflaging your hook. You are actually helping your lure hide from the fish. We need to break the habit of thinking that natural always equals better. Let us look at the actual science of light penetration. When the sun hits a clear lake, the light travels down for many feet, illuminating everything. Fish use their vision as their primary tool to hunt. But when you have suspended sediment, dirt, and mud in the water, the light gets blocked almost instantly. In heavily stained spring water, visibility might drop to just 2 or 3 inches. If it is a cloudy spring day on top of that, it is practically pitch black down at the bottom, that translucent bait with the delicate silver flakes inside. It requires sunlight to flash and shine. Without light, it becomes a dark, featureless shadow that blends directly into the muddy background. You are throwing a ghost into a dark room and expecting a blindfolded fish to find it. Imagine the strike zone for a moment. Picture a big, hungry bass holding tight to a submerged tree stump. He is cold, he is conserving energy, and he is waiting for an easy meal to swim right in front of his face. You cast your favorite quiet natural bait, and you drag it past the stump. The bait passes exactly 2 feet to the left of the fish. In clear water, that base would easily spot the movement, turn around, and absolutely crush it. But in this muddy spring scenario, the visual strike zone has shrunk from several feet to just a few inches. Your bait passed silently by, totally unseen. The base never even flinched. You retrieve your lure thinking there are no fish near that stump, when in reality, your presentation just completely failed to get his attention. So how do we fix this massive problem? We have to shift our focus from sight to feeling. Fish have a lateral line, which is basically an incredibly sensitive radar system running down the side of their bodies. They use it to detect vibrations and water pressure changes. If your bait is completely silent and slender, like a drop-shot worm or a soft plastic stick bait, it pushes almost zero water. It makes no noise. It creates no vibration. In muddy water, if they cannot see it and they cannot feel it, it simply does not exist. You are wasting your time. You must put away those silent, sneaky baits and start tying on things that cause an absolute commotion under the surface. Here is another classic myth we need to destroy right now, the subtle presentation myth. A lot of guys believe that because the water is cold in the early spring, the fish are incredibly sluggish and easily spooked. They think you have to fish with small, quiet, finesse baits so you do not scare them away. While it is true that cold water slows their metabolism, muddy water overrules the temperature rule. If a fish is cold and swimming in dark water, they need a clear homing beacon to track down their prey. A tiny, silent jig is completely useless here. You actually need a loud, obnoxious bait that aggressively announces its presence. Do not be afraid to make a little bit of noise. Let us imagine a totally different scenario. Instead of a silent worm, you tie on a loud, rattling crankbait. You cast it out and start bringing it back. Inside that plastic body, small metal beads are violently shaking back and forth. They are sending out high-frequency shockwaves in every single direction. Now picture that same base sitting by the stump. He cannot see the lure yet, but he can hear it coming from 10 feet away. His lateral line starts picking up the hard vibrations. He turns his body toward the noise. He starts tracking it like a submarine hunting a target. You have effectively given that fish a map to find your hook, even in the darkest, muddiest water. Now let us transition to the topic of paint jobs, because color still matters, just not in the way you might think. When you open your tackle box, you probably see a lot of beautiful, detailed lures with scales, painted eyes, and transparent bellies. They look like they belong in an art museum. Close the lid on those. In muddy water, intricate details vanish immediately. Fish do not have the time or the visibility to count the scales on your lure. You need to focus entirely on solid, aggressive contrast. You want colors that stand out loudly against a muddy brown background. Forget about ghost minnow patterns. It is time to get a little bit ugly. There is one color combination that rules supreme in dirty water, and it usually surprises beginner anglers: black and blue. It sounds totally wrong, right? Why would you throw a dark bait into dark water? It comes down to silhouettes. When a fish looks up toward the surface, a solid black and blue bait creates a massive, dense shadow against the slightly lighter water above. It blocks out whatever faint light is left. A translucent bait lets light pass through, making it disappear. But a bulky black and blue jig creates a hard, undeniable profile. It is the ultimate contrast tool, and it will catch fish when natural colors fail completely. What about adding some flash to your presentation? Many fishermen love spinnerbaits for spring fishing, but choosing the right metal blade is critical. You have silver blades and gold blades. Silver blades act like a mirror. They take sunlight and bounce it around to create a bright flash. But remember, we have zero sunlight penetrating this muddy water. Therefore, a silver blade just looks like a grey, dull piece of metal spinning in the dark. A gold blade, on the other hand, creates a distinct, warm, brassy thump that reflects even the tiniest amount of ambient light in stained water. Always reach for the gold when the water turns to mud. Let us talk about water displacement. This is a fancy way of saying how much water your lure physically pushes out of the way as it moves. Imagine trying to sneak through a swimming pool. If you dive in smoothly, you make very little wake. If you jump in doing a cannonball, waves crash everywhere. In muddy spring water, your lure needs to do a cannonball. A thin, straight tailworm slips through the water unnoticed. You need to switch to bulky creature baits. Look for soft plastics with thick ribs, large flapping claws, and heavy appendages. Every time you drag that bulky bait, it shoves a massive amount of water against the lateral line of the fish. Moving on to another sense entirely, let us talk about scent trails. A lot of old-school fishermen laugh at the idea of spraying liquid garlic or crawfish scent onto their artificial lures. They think it is just a gimmick to catch anglers in the tackle shop. But in zero-visibility conditions, scent becomes a massive advantage. When a fish is blindly tracking the vibration of your bait, they will often take a quick test bite to see if it is real food. If your bait smells like strong garlic or salt, they will hold on to it for just 1 extra second. That single second is exactly the amount of time you need to feel the bite and set the hook. Now we need to address your reeling speed, because this ruins more catches than the wrong bait ever could. Let us say you finally tied on a big, loud, dark-colored lure. You are doing everything right, but you cast it out and crank it back to the boat as fast as humanly possible. Think about the poor fish. It is early spring, the water is 50 degrees, and the fish is sluggish. It hears your loud bait, it turns to attack, but the lure is flying past at 20 miles per hour. By the time the fish reacts, your bait is already 10 feet away. You have to slow down, give the fish time to track the noise and catch up to the vibration. One of the most effective techniques you can use is the pause and bump method. Imagine you are reeling a loud crankbait along the rocky bottom. Suddenly the bill of the bait smashes into a big rock. Instead of just reeling faster, you completely stop. You let the bait pause for 3 full seconds. In that moment, the loud rattling stops and the bait slowly starts to float up. A fish that was following the noise will often violently attack during that exact moment of silence. The sudden change in movement triggers a pure predatory reaction. They strike because they think their prey just injured itself on the rock and is trying to get away. Let us discuss topwater fishing for a second. Nothing is more exciting than watching a giant fish explode on a surface lure. But in the early spring, when the water is cold and muddy, relying on your favorite topwater popper is a huge mistake. Fish are not looking up. They are glued to the bottom, holding tight to rocks and wood where it is slightly warmer. A popper splashing on the surface might sound great to you, but to a fish holding in 10 feet of muddy water, it is barely a whisper. You are fishing in the completely wrong zone. Put the topwater box away until the water warms up and clears out. If you are stubbornly committed to using a spinnerbait, we need to talk about blade shapes. There are willow blades, which are long and skinny like a leaf, and there are Colorado blades, which are completely round like a coin. Willow blades are designed to spin incredibly fast and create maximum visual flash in clear water. They are useless in the mud. You need the big, fat Colorado blade. Because it is round, it grabs a massive amount of water as it spins. It creates a deep, heavy thump that you can actually feel vibrating all the way down your rod handle. That slow heartbeat thump is exactly what a muddy waterfish is searching for. It is officially time to reevaluate how you organize your tackle box for the spring season. Go grab your bags of soft plastics, pull out all the clear, translucent, light green and pale colors. Put them in a totally separate pile. Those are your summer baits. Now look for the solid black, the deep purple, the bright neon chartreuse, and the solid white. Move those directly to the front of your bag. By forcing yourself to only look at high, contrast, solid colors, you eliminate the temptation to tie on something invisible just because it looks pretty to your human eyes. Set yourself up for success before you even leave the garage. Let us talk about the psychology of confidence baits. We all have that one lure that we trust more than anything else. It is a powerful psychological crutch. When the fishing gets tough, we naturally reach for the thing that feels safe. But fishing is not about reliving the past. It is about solving a puzzle in the present moment. Being stubborn and throwing a clear bait into a mud puddle just because it worked 3 years ago is the definition of insanity. You have to be willing to break your own rules. The best anglers in the world are not the ones with the luckiest lures. They are the ones who are willing to completely change their strategy when the conditions demand it. Imagine you are out on a boat with a stubborn fishing buddy. The water is totally trashed from a spring storm. You tie on a bulky black and blue jig with a massive rattle inside. Your buddy laughs at you and ties on his favorite tiny, natural brown finesse worm. 2 hours later, you have caught 4 solid fish, and he has not had a single nibble. He starts complaining that you just have the better side of the boat. He complains about the wind. He complains about everything except his bait. Do not be that guy. Understand that your buddy is fishing invisible water while you are ringing a dinner bell directly in the face of the fish. The ultimate secret to conquering muddy spring water is combining all of the senses into one single presentation. You want to trigger the lateral line with a bulky, water-pushing shape. You want to trigger their hearing by adding a loud, aggressive rattle. You want to trigger their limited vision by using a solid, high-contrast color like neon chartreuse or pure black. And finally, you want to trigger their taste with a heavy dose of scent. When you combine sight, sound, vibration, and smell, you turn a completely invisible ghost into an absolute underwater bulldozer. You leave the fish with absolutely no choice but to strike. So, let us pull everything together and look at the big picture. The craziest realization here is that your favorite spring lure is probably not a bad lure at all. It is just entirely invisible right now. When the spring rains turn your local lake into a bowl of thick, brown soup, the rules of the game change instantly. You cannot rely on clear water tactics, and you definitely cannot rely on the old myths of perfectly matching the hatch. By stepping out of your comfort zone, abandoning those translucent natural colors, and tying on something bulky, loud, and totally obnoxious, you are giving the fish a chance to actually find your hook. Stop fishing blind and start making some noise. I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today and talking some real fishing strategy. If this video changed the way you look at your tackle box, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button. Leave a like on the video, and most importantly, get down in the comments section right now. I want to know, what is the absolute ugliest, loudest, craziest colored bait you own that you are finally going to test out on your next muddy spring trip? Let us talk about it down below. Tight lines, everyone, and I will see you on the water.